Welcome to the show, Kevin. It's awesome having you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Well, why don't we start off with having you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So my name's Kevin. I'm from South Central Pennsylvania. I am husband of my amazing wife, Crystal. We've been married for 21 and a half years. We have five kids, um, one biological and the other four adopted. And I think it's really important that we quantify. I don't look at my kids as adopted kids. We're adoptive parents. They're just my kids, and I love them all the same. So it's been part of our journey, and we've done a lot of different things along the way. We've lived in Latin America for a while as missionaries. I was a pastor here in Pennsylvania, and I have since moved on to like business and ministry coaching. And so we are an entrepreneur family now and doing all those things. And so that's what we do.
How old are your kids?
So my oldest is 17, 14, 13, 12, and 8.
Wow. I can only
Yeah,
imagine busy.
we're
I've got
all
a,
over the place.
a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, and yeah, we're very, very busy. I couldn't imagine adding three more to the mix.
Oh, it's a fun day for sure.
Wow. Well, I guess you have to be resilient to have that many kiddos. But even though we're focusing on, family and kids resilience, they go hand in hand really at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Um, so where should we start? I know that we've got so much to talk about this morning, and I love the message just focusing on that resilience and determination and strength, taking that strength lens.
I think for me, my story, the story that I want to share with your audience is about the idea of determination and resiliency. It really is our kid's story. My wife, what was it, back in 2012 or 13, she had a lot of complications with pregnancy and it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't happening. And so she's got this very much a can-do mentality. Don't tell me how you can, tell me how you can, those kind of things. And it was just an effort of, all right, what can we do to add children to our family? And so we started in foster care and we did foster care for a long time. And we retired from that back in, I don't know, 2015 or 16, and have adopted. Three of our kids came through the adoption and foster care system. But our youngest daughter, 8-year-old daughter, Eliana, she came to us through a private adoption scenario. And that made us. Like it was so difficult to get through that process. We had to fight so many uphill battles. And if it wasn't for like that sheer will and determination, we would have quit. In fact, we did quit at one point. Um, but I think once we finally got to the spot of like knowing that we were matched and that there was a baby on the other end of this, it made it way better. And now here we are 8 years in, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But it was so difficult getting to that spot. And honestly, it's come to the spot now where I actually wrote a book about this. I called it Breaking the I Can't Cycle. It's not published yet, but it's in the works right now. But I wonder how many people are out there that have a desire or an aspiration to something, but because of the difficulty that's standing in their way, they just say, this is impossible. I can't do this. It's just not going to happen. And that has to stop. There's so much that is accessible to you, but for the difficulty of whatever mountain range is in front of you, how do we cross over that? And how do we take one step at a time to get the thing that you really want to get?
Mhm. I love that. That's so powerful. I know it's a lot of it. It's interesting what drives people. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's the I have just I sound like your wife maybe and just force the universe. You just got to make it
You got to
happen.
make it happen.
Like it's just going that way. But I know it's easy for people to get stuck. So how do we shift that I can't do it, it's impossible, or there's too many barriers or whatever, whatever the stuckness is. How do we,
Yeah.
shift away?
You know, a lot of it comes down to self-talk and the mindset that you approach things with. For me, in your upbringing, the surroundings, all the things that kind of coincide with it. So I'm 43 right now, and I felt like when I was 40, there was like a light switch that went off in me, and I felt like so much of my life had been directed in fear-based thinking. In other words, I was trying to avoid whatever the fearful outcome that I was feeling. And so I had discovered that my fear was the fear of poverty. And so everything that I was dealing with was, does this bring me closer to that, or does it take me away from it? Or I didn't realize that. It comes down to that idea of you don't know what you don't know, but you're guilty of what you don't know. Well, I didn't know that I was afraid of poverty. And so I didn't realize that every decision I was making was confronting that, including this idea of adoption. Because, I mean, do you have any idea how expensive it is to adopt privately?
No
I mean, we
idea.
were getting presented cases that started at like $28,000 and they would top out. I think the most expensive case we were presented was 55,000. I'm like, we didn't, I was a ministry. I was a pastor. I mean, pastors are broke as it is. I didn't have any money for this. And so it was just threatening like what I did have or what we did have. It was threatening all of that. And so I just became this, this puddle of, I can't handle that. I can't do that. I can't imagine that. I can't even put that in my head. And so my whole life was wrapped around that I can't statement. And what I discovered is that when you use those words, I can't, you're not talking actually about your current reality. You're actually declaring over your future that it is impossible for you. And so when you say, I can't afford that, you're literally saying, I will never be able to afford that. Because what happens when you do something like that? You start messing with your own psychology and you say, well, because it's impossible for me now, I'm not even going to take steps in the direction of what might need to happen for it to be possible for me. So then it's never going to be possible for you. So Henry Ford said this, to those who think he can't and those who think he can, they're both right. It really all comes down to what do you want to do and what is possible for you? Because if you think it's possible for you, then it's possible for you. So let's go figure it out.
That's the exact quote I was just gonna say. You took the
Yeah.
words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
It's a pretty
Mhm.
famous quote.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, I focus a lot on kids and teenagers and what, the adults in their life can do
Mhm.
to kind of help. What can we do in our role, whether it's, I think, it's our own journey for sure
Right.
to be good models, but what are those things that we could be doing to support our kids in this journey?
Man, that's such a good question. And we're kind of living this right now. I'm living and learning at the same time. You write a page and then you read it to your kids or whatever. My son, my 17-year-old son Austin came to me. It was 2 years ago now. It was 2 years ago. And at 15 and a half years old, and he says, Dad, I want to start my own business. And I'm thinking, this is going to be fun, right? At 15 years old, what kind of business can a 15-year-old start? I said, okay, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to start a car washing business. And I'm thinking, this is going to be hard for me because whatever this looks like for him, it's going to require time and intentionality from me. Well, I didn't know what he had in his mind, and what he developed over the next year and a year and a half or so was a mobile detailing business where he was going to buy his own work van and he was going to go to work on other people's property and he's going to wash their cars and all this stuff. And he is making thousands of dollars right now
Wow.
doing this. And here's what I learned about the process. I mean, he showed me up. I'm going to him asking him for marketing advice and all this stuff now. And what he's shown me is that if I would have told him, no, you can't do that. If I would have declared that over his certainty, over his possibility or whatever, what would that have done for him? I mean, it would totally have just squashed him and burst his bubble and all these different things. Really, what needed for me to happen was I just needed to get out of the way and let him decide what he needed to do, coach him into the idea of, okay, here's the parameters that these needs to sit in. But he just needed my belief. He just needed me to believe in him and kind of let him go. And I'll be honest with you, from a standpoint or a financial standpoint, I didn't put any money into it. He didn't ask me for a loan. He didn't ask me for anything. He just like, this is what I'm going to do, Dad. Are you cool with that? Sure. I mean, it took some effort for me to drive him some places while he didn't have a driver's license, but I think it just takes an opportunity for us to believe in our kids' ideas and encourage them in it and kind of stand out of the way. Let's listen to them and learn what they have to say. And I don't know, encourage the steps in the direction of who they want to become and of what they want to do. I mean, it's all there. I think it's in drilled or given into the mind of every person is the thing that they want to do. They just don't know how to get it out. How do we access that and give them the creativity or the venue to be able to be creative and to let those things come out?
Well, and I think I have a couple of questions, and I think that's my first one actually is just around that. Like, I'm just wondering about the road to get there because I find kids are so overscheduled, over monitored, over supervised that they don't have a single creative thought anymore. And if they're not being told what to do, they're on a screen or, like just
Yeah,
the world has changed so much and there's no time to be bored and to daydream and to think about the future other than school and academics and what Ivy League university am I going to go to and all of
yeah,
these pieces, right? These expectations that whether they're told explicitly and directly or subtly implicitly, right? That these assumptions are made. So I'm just
100%.
wondering, like, how did you help get your son to think about the future, to be able to take that leap? Is
Yeah.
there anything that you can think of?
Yeah, 100%. And I have to kind of press into like the biblical realm with this to unpack this, and I hope that's okay. But there's a Bible verse, Romans 12, 2, that says, "Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." And so we've kind of put that over our parenting as a filter because what you don't see this unless you start looking at it from an analysis perspective. What does that mean? Not everything that you are told that you have to do has to be done the way that it's told to be done. For example, education is a great point for this. We have this education system, and by and large, 90%, I'm just going to pull a figure down, 90% of people say that we have to do it that way. But do you? And so we started looking at life and started asking those questions and saying, well, does parenting have to look like this? And so we pulled our kids out of school and put them into a homeschool setting so that we could have more time and intentionality with them. That's to us, that said, that's an non-conforming way of doing something different. And so it gave Austin the ability to have time and freedom and space to be able to dream up what he wanted and what he needed to do. And so I love the fact that you talked about free space and board time and those kind of things. We're kind of borderline religious about those kind of things, about making sure that our kids have space to just be bored. It's not a problem for us to say, you know what, we're not doing anything today. We're just going to be at home. And, here's a max that you're going to spend on screen time today, and the rest you're just going to be creative or have fun or we're just unscripted moments. So you're preaching to the choir with me with that idea because I totally believe it. And I want our kids to be able to have some space to have to figure it out for themselves what this is going to look like and what they want to do. Um, it necessitates an element of desperation. You're desperate to fill your board time, or you're desperate to itch that creative thing that you've got inside of you. And so they have to get desperate enough to figure out that solution for themselves.
And I think that there's a couple of pieces in there too. Just that whole conformity. Right away, I was thinking of two things. One was Mr. Mom. Did you ever watch that movie with Michael Keaton?
Ah, man, I think it's been a long time, but yeah, I
It's an
think I have.
it's an old movie where yeah, so he's the executive who's the breadwinner, but he
Yes.
loses, he's laid off. And so his wife, who's been the homemaker, for many years, has to go back to work. So he has to come into the home and be the Mr. Mom. And I just love like the way he parents is very different. And so just being able to, dry socks, he put them in the microwave.
Yeah.
His kid's blankie was ripped, so he stapled it together. But then transferring that to our kids, there's a great clip that I often refer people to. It's Stephen Covey. If people just go to YouTube, Stephen Covey, Green and Clean, he's telling his kiddo to take care of the lawn. I don't care how you do it,
Right.
right? So we're creating that stewardshipness where
Yes.
how you do it is up to you, and that's where the creativity and the ownership and that determination can come into play. It's when we're telling you must do this every
Hmm.
Monday, Tuesday at 4 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like that's where we just kind of stifle kids. So I think there's some room there with that creativity as well. So you kind of started off
Yes.
with that, but then the opportunity, that space, our brain likes to go into default mode, which is the mind wandering. That's where it prefers to be, and that's where creativity and ideas come from. So yeah, there's a lot there.
But I think the problem is like within such a scheduled or a stacked society, there's no space for that anymore.
I know.
And I think I hear what you're saying in the terms of there has to be those kind of things if those minds are going to develop into what they need to or want to develop into. I love that.
Yeah. So creating that space is kind of that first step and giving them those opportunities. And then what happens if they do get stuck? How do we support, let's just say it sounds like it was pretty smooth sailing for your son in this case, but maybe there might be a time where there is some stuckness. I don't know. How do we
Yeah.
support them so that they keep that sort of positive mindset that anything is possible?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for me, the way that this has fleshed out for me, I did this without intentionality a long time ago. When my son Austin, who's 17 now, when he was like 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever the age was, I was always inviting him into the process with me. Hey, let's do this. Come with me and do this. And I would specifically put him in situations where he was overwhelmed. I would give him something, a task to do, take care of this or whatever, and he couldn't do it. And I'd watch him as he would blow up. He'd get so frustrated, and he was the kind of kid who his temper just fused very shortly, and so he'd get frustrated and he'd throw something down or he'd throw himself down in a little temper tantrum. And I would teach him in that moment, hey, Austin, it's not that you can't do this. It's that you need to figure out what the pathway is to figure out how to do this. And so I told him, I came up with this little thing when when he was that age, and I told him like, I'm going to teach you the rules of the hardworking guy or whatever. I don't even remember what they are now, but the first one was this is like, never say I can't. Let's just ask for help. Let's find a new way. Let's look for a tool of leverage that we can use to be able to get this in the direction of where we want to go. And to be honest, he still uses those things today where he's kind of recognizing, all right, I got to push back for a minute and stop with the intensity of, trying to solve the problem. When I work with coaching clients right now, I always tell them this. If you're up against a problem, stop focusing on the problem because if you can only focus on the problem, you will lose the opportunity that's coming as a result of the problem. And the same thing is true for our kids. If they're hyper focused on fixing the whatever's uncomfortable, you're missing the learning that needs to come through that problem. You need to get some distance from this, push back from the table for a minute, and take a look around, check your pulse on what actually is happening. And most of the time, a solution will present itself to them or to you or whoever else. And that has been a really invaluable tool for him to figure out, I don't have to fix this right now. There's time, there's space, there's opportunity for learning right here. And then we'll go about it again.
Right. So it's being able, there's a few skills in there, being able to pull away from the problem, because otherwise we're
Yeah,
just going to be stuck with that problem, and we can't see, the bigger picture. So being able to pull away is one skill, but then problem solve. So this is one option. What are
right.
the other options? And you're right, we're going to get more of whatever we pay attention to. It's the same thing
Exactly.
in any part of life. Even I remember learning to ride a motorcycle many years ago, and they say, look where you want to go, don't look down. I looked down. Guess where I went? Down and crashed the bike, right? And so it's true in any area of life. We got to look, where we actually want to go. So it's sort of setting that GPS, and it's very clear. Your son had a very clear point, that GPS, and so how he got there, it just sort of falls into place, doesn't it? When we're actually
Absolutely.
looking in that direction. So
Yeah, it almost should be of no surprise. It's no surprise that he's ending up like this because he's forecasting it. He's looking down the road. He's like, this is where I want to end up at, and this is what it's going to take to do that.
right. Yeah. Is there ever, just out of curiosity, because I'm very much, I don't know if it's my ADHD or something else, but I'm just like, I get an idea, I'm like, fantastic, and I go for it. But then my husband's like, yeah, but I'm in the background cleaning up the mess everywhere. So I kind of
Mm,
feel like Inspector Gadget a little bit, where I'm like, just go. And Penny is behind, like, making sure he's safe and cleaning up the messes. But I don't know if you've ever seen that or noticed that. That's what my husband tells me anyways.
No,
But
that's a hilarious analogy, man. Inspector Gadget. I haven't thought about that in a long time. Um, No, I think obviously we're talking about like personality profiles here and like a disc assessment and where are you on the spectrum of that whole thing. But we have to recognize the different personalities that are at play here. Even our kids have personalities, right? And it's intriguing to figure out where do they sit on the spectrum of each one of those personality traits to know how they process and what they do and what would speak to them. I love the fact that you're kind of insinuating that you're a decision maker. You make a decision, you go after it. You don't need a whole lot of the analysis that comes with some other profiles that are at play here. And those are important too. Maybe just not in they're not as important to you in that setting. But there's nothing wrong with that. I guess it'd be learning the balance of how does all this go together and what do you do with it in the meantime. That would be the same way that my wife is. My wife is insanely detailed, and I'm not at all. Um, and we need those people to like balance us out.
right. And we know resilience needs support networks, right?
Oh my
There's no
goodness,
Cinderella story without the mice and the fairy godmother and the horse and, all of that support system that's around
that
to
is the
kind of help.
truth.
So I think that that's another big piece aside from skills that we're developing in our kids. It's that support network. Resilient people are well resourced, and it's really from that support. So yeah, and I think there's too, the opportunity to we find that there's maybe a dead end in a way that we go, but it doesn't mean it's an end. It's just not in that direction,
Sure,
right?
it's a
And so
redirect.
a redirection. And same thing with GPS. That's why I love the GPS analogy is when you set it, even if there's a detour, even if you're going the opposite direction, as long as you maintain that GPS, you're going to find your way back there, even if the route looks a little bit
Truth.
different. And so I think, for me, it- learning that maybe if there are mistakes along the way, we have to learn from those. And so
Right.
letting our kids, sometimes we can see that dead end or, the redirection that's needed, but they need to learn from that mistake. I don't know if that's ever happened in the journey for Austin to get to where he is, if there was times where he kind of had to learn trial by error and
Oh yeah.
over.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And I think the important facet about something like that is you're talking about terms that require you creating a definition. What is a mistake? And what is failure? And what is success? And what is better? And all those things require you to decide what the definition of each one of those things is. Because to be honest, what's failure to you may not be failure to me. And what success is to you may not be success to me. And so it's really important for you, for your kids, for whoever's involved in the process to define what that looks like so that when you hit it, you realize, okay, this is what I'm actually dealing with right here, and this is what I need to do about it. If you don't define those things, you are at the whim of somebody else's definition, and that can throw you for a tailspin every time because now you're comparing yourself with someone else, and you can't win. You cannot win when you're comparing yourself to someone else. The only thing that you properly can compare yourself is who you were yesterday. And as long as we're making micro or incremental movement, one step, 1% difference, that's success. And so, even in the scope of, hey, this didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, okay, let's learn from that. Like, for example, my son did in his early days of doing this whole detail thing. Somebody had hired him. I think it was like a test. They wanted him to come and do a test car. And so they accused him about 6 weeks after the fact of messing up the paint job on this car. Well, 6 weeks is a very long time when it comes to like car washing. And so they actually threatened to sue him. And that's a big deal when you're only 16 years old to be threatened with a lawsuit. And thankfully, it never came to that. But he learned, like, okay, I need to think about this differently. And there's some things that I need to do. And the accusation could never really be substantiated because too much time had passed and so many different things. But he realized that, okay, if I'm going to be a pro in this business, then there's some safeguards that I need to put in place to be able to learn from this. And I was really appreciative of like the warning hey, this is where you're at. And so let's create some safeguards to be able to protect you in this. And, you know, we all need those things, especially our kids, right? And so that was a good learning tool for us.
Absolutely. And that's where, I love some of the a language shift in a couple of things that you've said. One is redirect, right, rather than a dead end or failure. But then the other one is the learning. So that's what mistakes are. It's a learning opportunity, right? So how can we
Exactly.
make this sturdier, stronger, better? And so it is that learning. Failure is when we don't learn and we just stay
Exactly.
stuck or give up on the dream, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, those are great. Lots to think about. Anything left unsaid that you think is really important to make sure we talk about?
Yeah, honestly, eliminate. And when I sit down with coaching clients, I do business and ministry coaching now. And in our very first session, I talk with these clients to actually it would even be in the discovery call of these sessions. And this is good for parenting too. But I tell these people, I said, there's two phrases that you're no longer allowed to say if you're going to work with me. The first one is I don't know. And the second one is I can't, followed by any other words. And why is that? Why do I do that? And I actually tell them, listen, if you go down those pathways and you create this habitual pattern of, using language like that, I will fire you. I'm not going to work with you because what you do in moments like that, I don't know, is like you building a brick wall around yourself. You're putting yourself inside of a prison that you cannot escape from. Like for example, try if someone asks you start ask questions or whatever, just start saying I don't know to them and see what they do. They'll stop asking you questions. Like there's nowhere you can go when you say I don't know. Because my thesis became this. Your future is defined by the questions that you're willing to answer. So
Mm,
force yourself to answer some questions, even if you don't know. Use the phrase, well, I feel like I need to do some research on that one. I need to investigate that. I need to do something. Give yourself some action so that you can advance on it. And then the second phrase, I can't, followed by anything else, I've already kind of declared or defined that when you use that phrase, you're declaring something over your future or an inability that will not come into your life because you won't take action on it. Obviously, your life is comprised based on the action that you have taken to be able to acquire, to be able to do, to become. And if you can't, then you won't.
right. Ah, I love it. And I actually, yeah, I don't know is not allowed to be said in my house.
That's
Very
good.
early on, we've, yeah. I feel I use so many analogies from shows. I really, truly hardly ever watch shows. But another one that comes to me is there's a Ted Danson show that's just come out, the Man Inside, I think it's
Oh,
called.
yes. My wife and I just watched that.
Okay, yeah, and so you've probably seen because I'm pretty sure it's the very first episode with the boys, and she's like, "Okay, you can't say I don't know. Tell me about your day." And they're like, "I don't know. Like, what's the question?" Yeah. So I think that's good. A good
I
rule
love it.
for all of us. Again, yeah, for our kids and for adults as well. Well, thank you so much. This has been valuable, and I know that there's great little pieces of insight there for people and who are listening in their own life, but also maybe with their kids or kids that they work with. I will have all of your information in the show notes, but for people who are listening right now, where's the very best place to reach you?
Yeah, for sure. My website, my name, kevinelworth.live. That's where all my information is and my links and all that good stuff.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.